Very good, very good. Good evening. Hello, 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 everyone. Thank you for coming in. We are going to get started in a couple minutes. Tonight we're talking about core beliefs. So, core beliefs are a part of our everyday lives, unfortunately. And not unfortunate. They can be good, right? But a lot of times when we're dealing with core beliefs, we're struggling with unconscious bias. We're struggling with our repetitive beliefs about ourselves. So these are a little bit different than our um, regular beliefs, if you will. These beliefs are more deep-seated and a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, to transform. Now, that's probably coming from my own bias, but just because these tend to be, a little bit more of ones that have been with you for a long time. So, we are going to discuss core beliefs tonight. Thank you all for coming in. Again, if you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Dr. Erica Steele. I'm a holistic doctor in family practice. I have 7 degrees in my field. Oh, it is. It's really stretched out. Hold on. Let me see if I can move it a little bit. Is that better? A little better? Moved it a little bit. Can you see that? Let me know. Yeah, so tonight we're going to talk about core beliefs. Did it make it better or no? Is it still the same? I don't know. It's kind of my normal. You got to shrink it. Oh, okay. Hold on. Is that better? Also, too, on this one, you can turn it to the side as well. It's I have a Pro Max and I'm on it, and it looks good on my end. It looks pretty clear on my side. Actually, when I shrunk it, it got a lot smaller. Hold on, let me move it to at least the middle. All right, cool. All right, sweet. Okay, so we're going to be discussing core beliefs tonight. So, what are core beliefs? Core beliefs are deeply grained assumptions about yourself, others, and the world. So they really begin with I can see it on my end because I have another device. So I don't know. Black is beautiful. I can see it completely on my phone because I'm looking at it. I check it before I. You got it? I'm not sure. You may want to turn. You can turn your phone to the side. It does allow you to do that because of the way that the OBS is set up. Um, Thank you, Naga. Yeah, I can see it on my end. Black is beautiful. You can show me. I think it depends on the phone that you're using. It probably depends on the screen as well. I'm not sure, but yeah, definitely send it to me on the Discord so I can look at it. Okay, so core beliefs are, again, they're these deeply ingrained assumptions about ourselves, others, the world, right? These beliefs typically are formed during our early childhood. And like I was telling you before, they operate subconsciously. So we don't even know that these are running in the background. Think of them almost as like computer programs running in the background and doing, they don't get updated ever. They just kind of sit there. And so some examples of that are I'm unworthy or the world is a dangerous place. And these are going to be often recurring thoughts that you notice, right? So you want to really start to get present to what am I thinking continuously? What am I thinking What do I keep thinking, right? Because they keep getting affirmed, and that's part of the challenge with core beliefs, is because you have these deep ingrained assumptions about yourself, and then you've programmed your brain to look for evidence of that, and as your brain picks up evidence, right, it just continues to reinforce it. And so that reinforcement of these beliefs becomes actually pretty dangerous if they're left unchecked. So, again, we're talking about core beliefs, the deepest layers of your subconscious mind. My name is Dr. Erica Steele. Thank you so much. And so, if you've missed any of our week, this week we've gone over all kinds of things, which we'll talk about, all relating to the subconscious mind. Last week we talked about the primitive mind. If you miss my lives, you can always watch the replays on YouTube or in our community, our free community. If you want to join the free community, just click the link in my bio on any of the platforms that you're watching this on. We're currently being streamed on YouTube, LinkedIn, IG, Facebook, and TikTok. So any of the platforms that you're on, there's a link in the bio. You can click it, and away you go. So, like I was saying, this week we talked about I do morning flow in the morning. This morning was kind of a crazy morning flow because I stayed up way too late and fell asleep on a live. But I woke up and did it, and we got through it. It was amazing. So movement, meditation, journaling. Yeah, it was nice and relaxing. And then on Monday, we kind of set the stage for the week with the subconscious mind. So we did an overview. Tuesday, we talked about perception and how perception shapes your reality. Wednesdays, we talked about beliefs and transforming limiting beliefs into empowering ones. And then on Thursday, which is today, we're going to talk about core beliefs. Tomorrow, we'll talk about defense mechanisms. So definitely tune in for that. We had our webinar last night. It was on the holistic mindset, and we did launch our wellness collective. And so our webinar, if you want to watch the replay, it's in our community. It's a free community. Again, click the link in the bio. And the wellness collective is a group of holistic minded individuals who are really interested in transforming their lives, either mental health, chronic disease, they want to lose weight or just change their habits in general, really want to get their families healthy, or high-level professionals that really want to shift. Those are really the 5 types of patients that I tend to see in my practice often. And so the Wellness Collective is a group coaching program that makes it a little bit more accessible than working with doctor one-on-one. And so we focus on one subject every single month. This month it is all about the mindset, so there's a workbook and all kinds of fun goodies that I worked on earlier today for you. And so that cost is $39 a month, very affordable. And so you get tons of content and tons of information. So do check that out if you're interested. Today we're going to talk about core beliefs and how they shape how we see ourselves, right? So let's jump in. Let me get into, okay, so we've talked about this, but let me kind of reframe it again. So core beliefs are really these habitual things you tell yourself over and over and over again. It's not like a belief where it's one and done. It's like kind of a passing thing. Oh, this is something that has either been reinforced either by a parental figure, a teacher, some sort of, like I call them, reality makers, that are people that are superior in your mind, right? Obviously, there's nobody superior to you, but when you're a child, you see people that are bigger than you, right? Literally, and so you believe that everything that they're telling you is absolutely real, right? You don't question, you don't think, you just kind of take it all in, and so in whatever people are saying or doing, this is going to really ingrain these beliefs. So really important to understand your core beliefs and what you can do about them. All right, so let's get into, I think this is it. Okay, so how are your core beliefs formed, right? So again, they're formed in your early childhood, but they're also formed based off of your family dynamics as well. So what do I mean by family dynamics? I mean how you and your family operate in the world. Oh wait, hold on one second. I think that one came undone. Okay, it's how you and your family operate in the world. I did something really quick to it. Sorry. And so let's say, hold on one second. Let's say, as a for instance, in my case, right, I very intuitive, right, very sensitive, very good with my language and communication. So I would point things out that I would see that would be, not so healthy. And so naturally, in a family system, when you have one of the family members kind of pointing out the family, that person gets scapegoated, right? So then you take on that role, or I took on that role of being a scapegoat. So being a scapegoat is I'm always wrong, I'm not good enough, my words don't matter, my voice doesn't matter. Because typically, when I would express and communicate, when you're pointing things out, what happens? People react, right? And people don't always react positively. In fact, they react negatively. So, based off of that conditioning of negative reactions, right, that is where I begin to form these core beliefs of I'm not important, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not a part of, or I'm not accepted, or whatever core belief that you want to take on, right? So that's how these things work. Now, they can also come from cultural, meaning like how your culture adapts or your culture doesn't adapt, right? So, for instance, certain cultural beliefs are, as a for instance, very homophobic, unfortunately. And so, if a child is told these homophobic comments, such as, let's say, don't cry, crying's for girls, right? Or crying's for sissies. Or one thing I've been hearing lately is that you're being soft, right? So while I understand sometimes why that's being said, we all, expressing emotion is a part of life, right? And I think sometimes, again, culturally and societally, we see emotion as a negative thing, and we villainize it, and that's part of that conditioning. So if I have an emotion, right, and society is telling me that having emotions are wrong, right, I'm gonna feel shame, I'm gonna feel guilt, I'm gonna feel ostracized. These are all these internalized emotions that I'm gonna feel, which then is gonna trigger these core beliefs that are already ingrained. Now, one would say that these core beliefs are already there, right, naturally, and then a person looks for experiences, or their brain unconsciously looks for experiences that are going to match that core belief, right? As an example, let's say in relationships, right, you again think you're not worthy because of whatever childhood pattern you've had, and so you have this core belief of I'm not worthy. So then you look for, right, various different partners, right, and then you find a partner, and that partner is not healthy, right? However, because that emotional experience is one of a lack of worth, right, and my nervous system is wired to believe that this is love, okay, because love to me was being put down, being told I'm this or that, or name calling or whatever. If those were my original experiences of love, right, I'm going to associate love with abuse, okay? And so we always ask ourselves, like, how could people get in these situations, and how could this happen, and what is going on, the thing is, yeah, the so when yeah, in the context of, yeah, that's, I have heard it on the panels, with people being soft, and I think, yeah, I don't, yeah, I mean, I think that we as humans, right, regardless of the race, right, we all have to access emotion, right? Some of us don't access emotion. Some of us don't access emotion at all. We lack empathy, right? And so, again, to reinforce that shame that they probably already feel, that's not necessarily going to move the goalpost, right? So we always look at our intention behind communication. And I know this is kind of off the beaten path, but the thing is that people come into spaces, places, situations, circumstances, and events already hardwired with things, right? So if you are encountering certain people that are hardwired, and we're all hardwired, right? And again, these negative experiences tend to reinforce limiting core beliefs. So, limiting core beliefs, remember we talked about beliefs yesterday, the limiting ones are the ones that are keeping us small, right? And then the expansive ones are more of our empowering ones, right? So, if my intention in communication is to empower somebody, right? Or to motivate somebody or to encourage someone to change, right? Then I'm going to communicate in ways that are going to encourage that and you're going to support that because that's more positive psychology than coming at it from more of a negative psychology perspective, which has just a lot of shame and put downs and guilt and that kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with either approach. It's just it's a preference, right? So for me, I am very sensitive to name calling. I'm very sensitive to yelling. I'm very sensitive to just those types of, forms of communication. So I make it a point not to engage in those types of communications, right? However, when we're in different spaces where different people operate in different ways, different people communicate in various different ways. And again, it's not good or bad or right or wrong. It's really about reflecting, right, on really how your core beliefs are impacting you in your current day, okay? Because these are coming from childhood. And so these messages are typically on repeat. So if I'm thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, right? I'm going to continue to reinforce those experiences, right? And so we don't necessarily want to keep reinforcing it, right? So what do, right? We have to get still, right? So, Black is Beautiful, are you doing okay today? Are you doing all right? Yeah, so hypervigilance is a nervous system response, it's a nervous system reaction, right? And so it happens as a response to something, a trigger, pretty much, right? So when we're triggered, something can be triggered. Most of the time, it's triggered from the past, right? So it can be a belief, but more importantly, if it's really debilitating, a lot of times it's one of these core beliefs. Okay. All right. So you're stating, right? I'm freaking out. I'm crying for no reason, and I'm panicking. Number one, are you safe? That's the first. That's the first question, right? Are you safe? And if you're safe, like physically safe, right, then you want to find your breath. You want to find your breath. Nice deep inhales, nice deep exhales, right? And then we want to affirm to ourselves that we're safe, okay? So let's say we have a core belief that I'm not safe, right? Because we encountered somebody and they were very hateful, right? So let's say somebody is in a space and they are saying really hateful things, right? Really negative things, right? So if we've had a previous experience, right, of a similar type of trauma, right, it's going to hit us pretty deeply, especially if that wound is not healed, okay? And that's why really being mindful of our core beliefs is key. So it's actually a good thing, right? When you're triggered. I know that that sounds crazy, but when you're triggered, that's when your mind is the most honest, okay? Because your mind is going to then start telling you all kinds of crazy things. The trick is, right, to catch it. To catch it and expand. And so we're going to talk about how we can do that. But just be with it, be with your breath for right now, right? That's the first thing. Okay, so when we are looking at core beliefs, we're going to look at patterns, right? What are those patterns? Hold on one second. I think there was one other slide actually. Hold on, let me get to this one. Okay, here we go. How core beliefs impact your life, right? So, all right, cool. I'll see you when you come back. Okay, so positive core beliefs, right, or are I'm capable, right? I deserve love. I'm worthy of love. And the result of you telling yourself that is going to be one of empowerment and confidence, right? So just try it right now. I'm capable. I'm deserving of love. I'm accepted, right? Immediately, you feel it in your body. You feel it, it lifts your spirit, right? Now we're going to look at your limiting core beliefs, right? I'm not good enough. People can't be trusted. As soon as you say that, I'm not good enough and people can't be trusted, you shrink. The result is fear, insecurity, right? Self-sabotage, because now you don't know who to trust. Okay? So what patterns in your life might be linked to a limiting core belief? Now it's tricky because we have a society and we have systemic structures that are set up. So we're not just making things up. There are legitimate things that happen, right? But we can't control our external environment. We can only control our internal environment, right? So we can allow an external experience, a situation, circumstance, or event to control us emotionally, mentally, or we can take our power back. And how do we take our power back? We recognize our limiting core beliefs. We recognize when we're telling ourselves, I'm not good enough, or people can't be trusted, or whatever it is. So it's really around what you're focused on. So if you're focused on, let's say, money, or you're focused on relationships, or you're focused on success or career, whatever your goal is, or whatever result that you're trying to create, right? You want to, once you start to go towards that goal and go towards what is necessary action wise, what happens is all these limiting core beliefs are going to start to come up, right? And they're going to come up, pretty aggressively. So they're going to come up all the time. I'm not good enough. People can't be trusted. I'm scared. I'm afraid. All sorts of different things, right? Because your ego, your subconscious mind is trying to warn you. It's trying to prevent you from moving forward. It's trying to prevent you from healing. It's trying to prevent you because, again, it thinks that whatever you're trying to do is not safe, okay? And that's where your nervous system gets involved. Because remember, when we talked about the biology of belief, we talked about thoughts and emotions, but also how that interplays with our physiology, how our nervous system takes on the life of its own based off of a thought, based off of an emotion. We have a nervous system reaction, right? And then we have action as a response to our nervous system. So if I'm telling myself certain things, I'm not good enough, I'm not loved, I'm not appreciated, whatever, based off of, let's say, my dating situation. Let's say I'm dating, right? And I'm going out on dates and they're not really going anywhere, or they're just not really good. I could easily internalize that and say, oh well, it's because I'm not good enough. It's because people can't be trusted. And what is that going to do? It's going to make me shrink, right? Instead, right, maybe I take myself out of the dating game for a minute, right? Just take a breath. And I rework why I'm worthy to be dating anyway. Why anyone would want to date me to begin with, because I really want to start to look at and focus on the positive. I'm capable. I'm deserving of love. I'm worthy of love. I'm beautiful, I'm fun, I'm smart, I'm whatever the adjectives are, because that's going to give you more confidence and more empowerment. I literally met my husband when I was living my best life, like happy, like just in my world. I remember literally 24 hours before, I was on the phone and I was saying, oh my God, I'm just so happy to be single and it feels so good and all these things. And then boom, 24 hours later, I met my husband. So, the thing is that it really depends on how you view yourself in the world and how you're habitually viewing yourself. So back before, right, when I was in really unhealthy relationships, right, I had these core beliefs. I'm not good enough. People can't be trusted. I'm not deserving of love. I'm not worthy. All of these that had been programmed because I had a really difficult childhood, right? And so, because I had a difficult childhood where there was a lot of abuses and a lot of things were said to me or a lot of things were done, that really wired my thinking into this manner, wired my thinking into thinking that it was me, that I was the problem, I was the scapegoat, I was what's wrong, I was whatever. So I didn't repair those core beliefs. Nobody told me that I had those core beliefs, right? I'm living life, doing my thing, right? And then I leave my home and then I start trying to live life and I try, I'm going to school, I'm dating, I'm being a mom, I'm doing all these things, right? And then life keeps showing up. And life keeps showing up negatively. So I can't control what's outside of me, but what I can do is come back to self. And I can go, what's the pattern here? What do I keep seeing? Do I keep dating the same person? Do I keep, maybe I'm really good at making money, but I keep losing it. Like, it just seems to be slipping through so quickly. Or maybe, gosh, I keep, trying to get this promotion at work or move on with this job and it's just not happening, or I'm not getting the offer that I'm looking for. Wherever you're stuck at is a response to a limiting core belief. So now you're going to put your detective hat on and you're going to be in the inquiry, right? Of where this, number one, what is it that I'm trying to create in my life? You're not a passive vessel, right? You want to be conscious and engaged in your life. So if you're conscious and engaged in your life, right, you're striving for something, even if it's contentment, right? And so, hey, Star Girl, so as you are becoming, more aware and present of what you want, and you start to move towards what you want, now all of a sudden these limiting beliefs are going to come up. So here you can succumb to the limiting beliefs. I could have succumbed to all the bad dates that I went on, or all the, abusive people I dated, or, I dated some really nice people too, but definitely not people that were in alignment with me. What if I would have stopped? What if I would have given up? What would have I would have said, oh, forget about it, right? So these limiting beliefs, imagine they're almost like resistance to your success in whatever area. And so we want to recognize them immediately. We want to see their recurring patterning in our lives. And how do we do that? We do that through self-awareness, and we'll talk about more of the practical side of it as we get into, we're kind of framing out the theory. So we want to work on really building more of these positive core beliefs. So for instance, I dated this guy who just was really not a healthy human being. And so we would get into arguments, right? And he would put me down. And so I would get into the point where he wouldn't even have to say anything. I would be saying it to myself. Why is that? Because that was my own core belief. He was just reflecting it back to me. So then I would get into a pattern of, and this is towards me leaving this relationship, where I would stop, I wouldn't argue with him. I would just detach and, okay, I'm going to go into the bedroom. And I would sit in the bedroom and I would just tell really nice things to myself. You're beautiful, you're wonderful, I love you, you're worth. I would just, and I'd be crying, I'd be super emotional, but I would be telling myself the things that I needed to hear, right? And anytime I get emotional like that, or anytime I am triggered, that's one of the first things that I do, even still to this day. I will fill my mind with nothing but positive things when I'm in those moments. And it's hard to do, because initially, again, we're wired to go into the negative because it's most familiar, it's most comfortable, and it's what our nervous system is attached to. So now if we're rewiring things, we have to first become present to it, that it's even there. And then once we're present to it, right, then we've got to turn that limiting belief into a more empowering one. And so if you want to learn more about that, definitely check out my video from yesterday, limiting beliefs, and empowering beliefs. Again, these beliefs are formed in our early childhood, right? And specifically within our family dynamics. So how was your family system set up? Who were your reality makers? How were their relationships with each other? How were their relationships with you? How are your relationships with the whole? Did you think that, you weren't accepted, you weren't loved, you weren't appreciated? Or did you feel like you were totally a part of and connected in this beautiful family unit where you were heard and seen all the time? Culturally and societally, did you ever feel like you were, again, ostracized? Or did you feel like you were accepted? Or were you displaced? Because there's a lot of cultural erasure and displacement. And then societal pressure to conform, to everybody to be whitewashed, everybody to be the same, all lives matter sort of thing. That has severe impacts because you're affirming that my story doesn't matter, my life doesn't matter, my needs don't matter, my experience doesn't matter, which can have deep emotional impacts, right? And then emotional experiences. So, let's say if you were shut down in communication, I'll give you something to cry about. Or I don't want to hear that. Or like you're soft, like that one. I'm conflicted about that one. These negative experiences tend to reinforce limiting core beliefs. Again, the more negative, the more bad dates you go on, the more you start stories of all men are bad. The more, you have to pay all these bills and money doesn't come in. You go, oh, money just keeps going. Money doesn't grow on trees. So, and those little kitches that we've heard as children, again, those begin to shape and form our core beliefs. When our parents say something just so, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, or, what do you think my name is? Rockefeller? Those kinds of things, right? They may seem very benign and they may seem very minor, right? But what happens is the child mind goes, wait a second, what does this mean? And if you don't, if the adults and the reality makers don't fill in the gaps, the child and the child mind is going to fill in the gaps. And what are they going to fill it in? Goodness. So these assumptions, right? We're just assuming about ourselves, about others, about the world. They're not truly facts. They're just assumptions. We don't know if they're true or not. But we do know that they're formed in early childhood and they operate in that subconscious mind and they are reoccurring. So we get them over and over and over and over again. So that's why we have the same thoughts, the same emotions, the same actions, because it's coming from a core belief. So look at what thoughts you repeat to yourself. Look at what emotions you feel all the time. Look at the people in your world. Those sorts of things, right? Let's see. All right, so now let's jump into rewriting some of our core beliefs. So we have to first be aware of our core beliefs. So we need to recognize the belief as it comes up. And I find that journaling is such a great tool for this because it allows me to look for, right? It allows me to pay attention. It allows me to see, right? So I begin to become aware of those beliefs because I'm looking for patterns. So I'm looking for reoccurring challenges. I'm looking for emotional responses. I'm also looking at my self-talk. And I may journal or I may meditate. These are all things that I'm going to do to build awareness so that I can begin to recognize what the belief is. So if the belief is I'm not good enough, right? I'm going to start to challenge that. Is this belief true? I'm not good enough. Is that true? If it is true, do I want it to be true? And if I don't want it to be true, where did it come from? And if I don't know where it comes from, how does it serve me today? What am I using this belief for? Is this a limiting belief or an empowering one? So I have to start challenging what I'm telling myself. I have to start challenging these beliefs. And as I begin to challenge them, now I can start to reframe them. What's reframing? It's shifting from more of a lower frequency, like a limiting belief, into more of an empowering belief, right? So it's shifting it from I'm unworthy to I'm deserving of love and success, right? I'm not good enough. I'm more than enough. I'm unlovable. Everyone loves me. And so see, sometimes if you go too far, that's why I love neutral so much. Because when you're really low, it's so hard to go from low to high. Like it's not, meaning it's difficult to go from I'm not good enough, I'm horrible, all these things, to now I'm the greatest thing in the world. It's very difficult to switch the mind like that. The mind doesn't, it's not very, obviously with neuroplasticity, it changes and it molds and it adapts, but it does take time. You notice in nature, right? Grass doesn't just pop up. The sun doesn't just pop up. Like, there is a process. It's the same way with this. It doesn't have to be a difficult process, but it is a process. And it's not a one and done. This is something that's going to take time. This is not the quick fix revolution, you know. I know everybody wants that quick fix and they want the, easy does it. This is work. Identifying, what keeps driving my behavior. Taking full responsibility. Looking at self, right? And as I begin to look at self, I write it down. I write down these beliefs. That's why I recommend you guys to have a trash journal. That trash journal is for all those crazy limiting beliefs that come up in the day. And they're not just about yourself. They can be about other people. Who does she think she is? They're doing this. They're doing that. Remember we talked about perception. We talked about the story versus the what so. It's all the stories that you're making up, right? So Tuesday we talked about perception. So go back and watch that video if you haven't already. So it's all those stories that you're making up that you're telling yourself, right? So they're either going to be limiting or they're going to be empowering. They're going to be I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, or they're going to be I'm worthy, I'm deserving, I'm successful, I'm beautiful, I'm wonderful, whatever, right? But we want to really begin to self-examine and look for these beliefs and then begin to challenge them. And challenge them in real time. So whenever I feel triggered, right, I sit with myself and I sit with my triggers so I can acknowledge where they are, right? So how do I identify my core beliefs, right? Again, I get triggered. I'm going to sit with myself. I'm going to look for patterns. Is this, keeps happening? Is it like Groundhog Day? Or does my emotions keep getting activated? Or do I keep getting overwhelmed? Do I keep wanting to run away? Do I keep getting angry? What happens? And then when something's happening, right? What am I telling myself? Am I telling myself I'm going to fail, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of success? What am I saying to myself? So let's find out. So go ahead and grab your treasure journal, right? So remember, you have a trash journal and treasure journal. You can use the same journal, but I like to separate it out, right? And the reason I say treasure, because I want you to get clear about the area of your life, and that's just it. One area of your life that you want to focus on, and I want you to put that in your treasure journal. And when you're writing it, so we're going to take a moment, right? And I want you to choose this one area of your life, and I want you to write just for a few minutes about what your ideal would be in this area. Like if you could have the partner, you could have the money, you could have the success, you could have whatever you want, right? If it's a heart's desire, it's been implanted by God, so it can manifest by birthright. You just have to get yourself into alignment. How do you get yourself into alignment? First off, you have to know what you want. So just write a few sentences or even a paragraph, about the one area of your life, and write it beautifully. Like, I want to see this, I want to feel that. Use your senses, touch, taste, feel, all of it. And so as you write it down, thank you, Prince, as you write it down, right, your mind is already going to go to work. It's already going to start to go, oh, you can't have that. That's not going to work. What are you going to do that? How are you going to make that happen? So this is where you grab that trash journal and you start picking those things out, right? You have to provoke them. So you provoke it by creating the world that you want or going towards that, right? Like, let's say, you want a promotion at work, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to focus solely on the promotion that you're going to get at work. Then what happens, right? Then you watch somebody else get promoted. Do you now shut down and now, I always fail and I'm not worthy of success? Or do you go, maybe my promotion is not at this location, but the promotion is mine. And this is where certainty without logic comes in. This is where faith comes in. This is where putting in the work comes in, because every single day you're not going to get an immediate result. Most things take days and months and weeks and years and thank you. All the things, right? So this is a continual process, right? A continual looking every single day. When I meditate, right? When I really sit with myself and visualize what I want, and little crazy things come into my brain, I write them down. I go, okay, that's interesting. Thanks for that. It's an interactive relationship, right? People assume that all the thoughts that you have in your mind are just there and that's it. No, we can shift them. So see if you can identify one core belief so far that you've noticed, right? Either I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I always fail, or, or even something about others. All men are like this, all women are like this, the government's like this. I know it's tricky because there are certain things that occur, but let's pretend, right? Let's visualize, imagine, picture, and pretend with our logic, our voice, our reason, our very keen and specific decision making, that we can create our world, not the other way around. Because again, we're programming our brain to look for evidence. So if I feel subjugated, I feel oppressed, I feel, right? I'm going to look for evidence of that. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not societal and systemic challenges, absolutely. But what that does mean is I can choose how I navigate this. Am I going to navigate this with stress and grief and strife and throwing my body up against the door or whatever to see if they open it? Or am I going to sit with myself? I'm going to be clear with myself. Hey, Strawberry, I'm going to be loving with myself. I'm going to reframe these negative emotions that are coming up, this negative self-talk that's coming up, right? So just as you're in the inquiry, right, and you don't have to run and do it right now, but just think about it. Really choose one area of your life. Be brave, because it does require bravery to look at one area of your life and look to change a pattern. Some people don't want to look. Some people do not even want to look. They don't want to see it. They don't want to take into anything into consideration. They're not interested in any of it at all, right? Most of the time, those people are either narcissistic or have some sort of psychological, pathological issue going on. So, if you're at least willing to look, that's a good thing, right? So, because it's uncomfortable. So, when we start to look at these patterns, right, we're starting to challenge these emotional responses or challenge these situations that keep coming up. We're going to start to think about and get present to what we're telling ourselves and what our self-talk is. And we're start to collect these limiting beliefs and start jotting them down. Like when I was doing this like really hardcore, when I first learned it, oh my gosh, I would literally sit outside of meetings I'd have, and I would be doing this technique called emotional freedom technique, which I'll talk about shortly. And it would bring up all of these areas, right, in my body and all of these emotions and beliefs, right? And I would go, oh my God, because it was like the first time, I think, in a long time I had ever felt, because I had been such in survival mode and I'd been so suppressed and shut down. I literally only had two emotions, neutral or pissed off. And so I started to use emotional freedom technique and tapping, right, which works on your meridian system. You can YouTube it. And so what it does is it begins to stimulate your meridian points. Your meridians are these energetic lines that emotions get stuck in. So you stimulate it, and then what you say is you validate. You say, even though I feel XYZ, so you validate the pattern, you validate the emotion, right, while you're tapping these endpoints. And again, you can look at the endpoints. So even though I feel this, I experience this challenge, I experience this emotion, I know deep down, right, that I'm going to be successful, that I'm already successful, that success is mine. I am success, right? So notice I started off, I'm like, I'm not too sure. It's kind of far away from me. I may be successful, right? To I am successful. To success is mine. To I am success. So we bring it closer to ourselves. The farther away, the future tense we're making it. So remember, language is very specific. So for instance, if we're trying to say, that I want to be out of pain, right? I want to be pain free. We're not going to say I want to be out of pain, right? Because what is that going to do? Reinforce pain. I'm going to instead say I'm agile, right? I'm limber. I'm flexible. I'm vibrant. I'm alive. Because if I try to go pain-free, I'm just reinforcing more pain, and I don't want that. So really being very, very critical of what you're telling yourself, what you're communicating. So what you're telling yourself is one reality, right? Then you give that reality jet fuel by telling someone else. And people do it all the time. They'll say things like, I'm not that smart, right? I don't have much education, right? So not only are they saying that to themselves, right, which limits them, but they're also now trying to enroll and communicate that to other people. So they're trying to hypnotize other people into this idea, this phenomenon that they're not intelligent. Okay? Why would you want to do that? Because of a core belief, right? Because if I hold on to this core belief of I'm not intelligent, right, then nobody's going to expect anything of me. Then I'm not going to have to be responsible. Then I'm not going to have to step up. So it actually works for me to hold on to that core belief, because then I get to stay comfortable. Because if people really knew that I'm brilliant, if people really knew that I know what I'm doing, then they're going to expect more of me. So you see how these beliefs get so mired with each other, right? So we have to start tackling the beliefs one at a time. And some of them, right, like I'm not enough, that one's really pervasive. And again, it's not that you can erase them, right, which we'll talk about, but it takes time. Number one, if you're constantly in the challenge or constantly in the story or constantly in the emotional response, the first thing is you got to get clear about what is and what's not. So you've got to separate out the story versus the what is. And then once you've separated out, then you look at the patterns in the story. And then if you have a few stories, right, you got a few situations going, then you can look at the patterns of those, and then you can start to really self-examine and go, okay, why do I keep, getting this result, right? And what did we say the other day? We said, I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing to do my part. Show me. Show me what I need to know. I don't know. I'm totally stuck. I just want to surrender everything over, and I just want to see. So be careful what you wish for, because as you start to look, what happens? You start to see, right? And then you start to see, you have to be responsible for what you see, right? And then change, which people avoid and they run, right? So remember, these core beliefs are impacting us every single day, all the time. Whether we are conscious to them or unconscious to them, doesn't really matter, right? We are speaking to ourselves all the time. And again, it's how we see ourselves, it's how we see others, it's how we see the world. So it first has to begin with self, because everything and everyone is you pushed out. So how you see yourself is how you're going to see the world. So if you don't think you're capable, the world's not going to think you're capable. If you don't think you're deserving of love, the world's not going to think you're deserving of love. If you don't think you're good enough, the world's not going to think you're good enough. We teach people how to treat us, right? Hey, Linby. Thanks, Prince. We teach people how to treat us. So if I'm running around with these belief systems of I'm not good enough, I'm not capable, I'm not loving, what those thoughts are then going to create emotions, right? I'm not going to feel good about myself. I'm going to feel depressed. I'm going to feel lethargic. I'm going to have no energy. I'm not going to work out. I'm not going to want to drink water. I'm not going to want to eat well. I'm not going to want to, do anything that's going to move me forward. And so I could, self-medicate, that's what people do. They'll go and they'll either, drink, or they'll do a rug, or they'll do, they'll have an unhealthy partner again and again, know that they're in a trauma bond, but still be doing it, right? Because it's familiar. Or they'll eat, or, whatever. Pick a struggle, right? There's all kinds of different mechanisms that we use in order to avoid ourselves, avoid seeing these limiting core beliefs. Because if we see them, that means we have to deal with them, right? So low self-esteem comes from these core beliefs. So if I don't feel like I'm good enough, how am I going to have self-esteem? And self-esteem typically is developed from our father, right? So how his self-esteem is how I perceived and learned what self-esteem is. Thank you, or not, right? Again, a lot of these beliefs are borrowed. They're not self-examined. We don't look at them. We just take them on and go, yep, that's true. Remember, a core belief is an assumption. It's not fact. It's literally something we are assuming. And it goes unchecked. And then people are walking around with no facts and all feelings. And where are all the feelings, right? It's from all these limiting core beliefs. So again, how I feel about myself is how I go to see the world. So if I don't feel like I'm good enough and I see somebody with confidence, how dare you have confidence? Because I don't have confidence, but you do. So I'm going to tear you down because I want you on my level, because I'm not comfortable with you and your confidence and you and your power. Because if I have to acknowledge that I'm comfortable with it, then that means I have to look at myself and I have to change and I have to shift, and I don't want to do that. So I'd rather tear you down than build myself up. That's part of that self-sabotage. That's part of that insecurity. That's part of that fear, right? It's a projection. We're just projecting onto other people what we think we know, what we assume to know, which in reality, We know nothing. None of us know anything. I have 7 degrees and I still know nothing. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure this thing out. I'll let you know what happens, you know? And so if we don't self examine, and I'm talking on a daily basis, right? If we don't set some time out and prioritize looking, journaling, what are the patterns that keep showing up? Why do I keep hitting a wall here? Why does this keep happening? Why does that keep happening? And so I'm asking myself. So a lot of times what happens is we get triggered and then we want to blame. So we want other people. We want to make it other people's responsibility. It's like hot potato. I get triggered with a good time. So you're the one who did this. You caused this disruption, right? But remember, when we have one finger pointing at somebody else, there's 3 pointing right back at ourselves. So the first thing we want to look at is ourselves. What is our part? What are we responsible for? What do we need to look at? What do we need to heal? And we have to do all that before we even get into somebody else. Most of the time, I've got so much going on with myself. I have no time or energy for other people's madness. I see it, I observe it, I recognize it, I think it's craziness, but I'm not going to go actively try to assist. I'm not going to actively go try to, because I'm going to focus on myself. And here's the other thing. We have a total obsession with wanting to help each other with their problems. Okay? A total obsession with it. But we don't have an obsession with helping ourselves. Why is that? Why is it that we're so willing to jump in and help someone else, but we're not willing for people to look at ourselves, right? Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of people who perceive people that have confidence as being pompous or proud, or another one, condescending. I get that one a lot. You're condescending. Why am I condescending? Because I'm educated and I use big words. Well, that's me, unfortunately. So, yeah, and it doesn't, I think I became a doctor when I was 24, and, I was always super young and always super intelligent, and, so I encountered a lot of ageism, I encountered a lot of racism, I encountered a lot of misogyny, because how dare you, right? And really, what's funny is 99% of the time, I'm just existing. Like, I'm just breathing, okay? And the breathing is triggering to many. And so I have a choice, right? I can then personalize it and go, oh, wait a second, why are they triggered about me, whatever? Or I can recognize, go, wait a second, whose stuff is this, right? Is this mine or is this theirs, right? If I have no emotional reaction on my end, I'm going to assume, right? I know we're assuming things, but I'm going to assume it's theirs, right? But if I do have a reaction, or it comes up again, or I can't stop thinking about this situation, then I know it's something deeper within me that I need to look at. So I'm going to really focus on me. Well, it's young even in the United States. So I left my house at 16. So I was early. So a prodigy. So yeah, the thing is that we operate, right, from our beliefs, and we operate from our core beliefs, right? So as a child, education was so important. My dad was in education, my mom was in healthcare and medicine, so education was like, that's the thing, So I put my value and my worth in my education. So that's also why I have 7 degrees. But guess what? I realized at a certain point that those things don't matter. That really I was just covering up this deep insecurity of not being good enough. And so if I had evidence of that, if I had all these certificates, then I had proof. Then people could validate me. Then people could acknowledge me, because I didn't feel like I had that as a child, right? But guess what? Joke's on me, because no matter how much external you get, it is never going to heal these core beliefs, these core wounds. It never will, no matter how much, right? And so when I was, I think I was signed up for, I think I was about to go into a PhD. I already had like 2 doctorates at that point, and I was like, okay, all right, Erica, you're never going to get your father's approval doing this, right? Because again, we get our self-esteem from our fathers, right? So if you have a father that doesn't acknowledge you, or a father that is not emotionally available, right? What happens? You internalize that. You think it's because of you that they're not emotionally available. You don't realize as a child it's because their own capacity. You internalize their stuff. That's why we call them reality makers, your parents, right? Because they literally create your reality, right? Or whomever was your, people above you at that time, right? So however they view themselves is also how you believe that you should operate too. So if there was a lack of self-esteem there, right, and then you take it on, boom, now I'm living into this experience, whether it's mine or someone else's. So again, this is why we want to examine these core beliefs. We want to look at them, right? Because they're formed in early experiences, family dynamics between. So as a child, right, you've got dynamics between your father, right? And let's say your father wasn't there, he wasn't in the picture, right? The missing of him creates issues. That's where abandonment, rejection, right? Even if it happened young, right? My parents divorced when I was 2, right? When I was doing acupressure for emotional healing, all of a sudden I'm crying about their divorce. And when I was in my 30s, I'm like, what is going on, right? Because those were deep wounds that were below the surface, that you're not aware of, that you're unconscious to until you go into the inquiry of it, until you start looking, until you start healing, until you start going, wait a second, you start questioning, right? And again, these negative experiences that you have reinforce these limiting beliefs, but also too, positive experiences can reinforce your empowering beliefs, right? So an example of this is resilience, right? So resilience is always something, right, that I've been able to value, right? So here's what happens, right? I go through life, I do something, something happens, right? Boom, I'm affected, right? And so I've been able to sit, become aware. All right, what do I need to do? How do I need to work this out? How do I need to sort this out? Okay, I can do this. And now this within myself, this resilience within myself, right? I can always overcome. I can always overcome, right? Well, what happens when you get tired, right? At a certain point, I used to say, the phoenix, if I see that thing rise one more time, right? It needs to be in the witness protection program at this point, right? Because, in my mind, I was perceiving that I was getting knocked down instead of perceiving that I was going to the next level, right? You see how we can look at things so differently. One can be punitive, right? Because most of us were brought down instead of brought up, right? Or I can look at this as expansion. It's all up to me. It's my choice, right? Yeah, indeed. There's so many of these things that we need to learn, right? Or we should have learned. But remember, consciousness wasn't really like a thing. Like the age of Aquarius in the 60s, like they began really understanding consciousness, but it was more of like kind of a drug-filled, fueled thing, it really, and there was so much angst, and you had the war, and you had, civil rights, and there was just so much going on at that time, right? Well, we are still products of that, right? I'm an 80s baby. So, we still grew up before the internet was a big thing, to be able to see that. So there was a lot of things that we didn't fact check. Like, think of it now. Like, oh my gosh, somebody said something and now we're like, boom, boom, boom. That's not even real, right? So, but back then, especially, there was no checks and balances. Yeah, Oh, thank you, Kuma, so much. Yeah, it's streamed on multiple platforms. So, and then the numbers keep changing and stuff too. It's not. I really, for me, my content is more long game content, not short game content. So I don't. It's not about all the big numbers because my numbers grow over time. Because it is valuable information and it stands the test of time, right? So we want to reflect on your childhood, right? Again, always coming back to the childhood. I know it's like, grown, right? But think about, some of those key relationships, some of those key family dynamics. What did you hear all the time? What were you told? What was your experience? What was reinforced? So like for me, I was so reinforced, you're intelligent. I was a prodigy, so it was always, school, 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 education, education, education. That's the deal. Well, I led my life with that, right? So education, right? Woof, right? But then other areas of my life suffered. My personal relationships suffered, because you have to be incredibly focused when you're in that, right? So then I look up and I'm like, wait a second, okay, so I've got all this, I've done all these things, right? But what else? What else do I have? So then, and a lot of successful people will tell you this, they're really good at their career life, but then their personal life, is just insane. And that I definitely held true to that premise. Professional life, great. Personal life, hard. Because why? It was all these core beliefs, right? I wasn't reinforced that I was, worthy of love or deserving of love. No, I was built to perform. I was built to achieve a goal. My parents were Marines, adapt and overcome, right? We're going to break you down to build you back up. These were actual things I was told as a child. Right? Who says that to kids? So having to, break that. But I'm so grateful for my parents because, having two Marines and experiencing that going, wait a second, this is kind of weird. This is kind of wild, this thinking, so that's why I ended up, dropping acid and following fish and, going to some rainbow gatherings to get myself back to center, right? So yeah, exactly. It's very much this deliberate programming over and over and over and over and over again. And that's really all conditioning is. It's all classical conditioning, right? We're just constantly fed the same information over and over and over again. But we also interpret it too, right? Because remember, core beliefs are assumptions, right? So they're deeply ingrained assumptions. So they're not always true, and that's the that's the kicker. Most of the time they're not true, right? The negative ones especially, right? So we assume these things about ourselves, we assume these things about others, we assume these things about the world, and we live into it as though it's reality, right? So yes, the world can be dangerous, right? But the world can also be safe too, right? It depends. We can create safety in a dangerous world, right? So, but if I live from this belief of the world is dangerous, I'm never going to want to leave my house. I'm never going to go anywhere. It's going to limit me. So I have to go. I don't have to, but I choose to say, all right, the world is a dangerous place, but I trust myself. I trust, I feel safe where I am. I'm aware, right? Hey, so I'm going to live with that and I'm going to be with that experience, right? And then I'm going to continue to reaffirm myself. I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. I had to do that one a lot just because of all of the abuses and trauma early on. I did not feel like the world was safe. My mother had mental illness. She had 18 confirmed personalities. So, and some of them were not nice at all. So, you kind of get this vibe like, wait a second, people are a little nutty, right? And this is why I do the work that I do, because I've experienced a lot in all different spectrums of the mind. There is literally a hairline between brilliance and insanity, indeed, and we're constantly straddling that line, right? And we do that in the mind, and we do that with our thoughts and what we affirm to ourselves and what we're telling ourselves and all of those things. So today we talked about these deep layers of our subconscious mind. Tomorrow we're going to get into defense mechanisms. So we'll be fighting for our lives as we identify and work with all the various strategies that the subconscious mind uses in order to keep ourselves stuck and safe and all of that. If you missed any of this lineup for the week, Tuesday, it's all on YouTube. It's already there for you. Tuesday, I talked about perception. Wednesday, I talked about belief. Today, we talk about core beliefs. So, and Monday, I talked about just the general overview of the subconscious mind. This week, we talked all about the subconscious mind. Last week, it was all about the primitive mind. Next week, we'll talk about the conscious mind, your conscious logical decision making. And then every morning, Monday through Friday, I do my morning flow at 6 a.m. where I start the day with movement, meditation, journaling, and we prep the day. So feel free to, you can check out the replay and also you can check it live as well. So I've committed myself to doing a daily teaching like this one for about an hour. I'm going to have to jump off because I have a patient. And then also doing our morning flow in the morning just to kind of keep you going. I had a webinar last night that went really, really well. It's a free webinar. It goes much deeper into the mind and more practical options. Totally free. There's a link in my bio. You can join my community. It's in there. Yeah. And then also I have a wellness collective, which is a group coaching program if you're interested in that as well. Much more affordable than working with me one-on-one, although working with me one-on-one is not super crazy expensive either. So, all right, key takeaways for today. Core beliefs shape how we see ourselves, how we see others, and how we see the world. So when we're healing our core beliefs, we have to break it down into these three. We have to start with ourselves and how we see ourselves. We cannot, if we start with other people, it won't work, right? Because a lot of times how we see ourselves is projected onto other people and it's impacted. So what will happen is once we start to deconstruct ourselves, it will deconstruct how we see others and then ultimately the world, right? And it's important to know that these are not permanent, right? So even if you had, a lifetime television movie childhood like I did, you can reprogram all of this. It does require work though, right? It's not just, feet up, pina coladas all day. Like every day I'm meditating, I'm journaling, I'm breathing, I'm taking care of myself, I'm resting, I'm, eating healthy. I'm doing the things that I need to do in order to stay well, right? Mentally, emotionally, because especially as Black people, we are very fragile emotionally and mentally, simply because of our genetics and the intergenerational trauma and the fact we're still in forced integration. So we definitely need to take care of ourselves, especially with this new administration coming in. Please do take care of yourself and focus on your beliefs. Remember, it's not about what other people say. It's about how you believe about yourself, right? And people will show you who they are. And here's the thing that I've learned about being a very unapologetic human being, right? Is that what time? So I do 6 a.m. and then usually around this time I'll do the other class. It just depends on the day. So hit the bell for sure. So here's what I've learned about being a super authentic person. Like I know who I am. I'm 10 toes for it, right? I will encounter other people who are not as secure in who they are, right? And then they will say and do and act in all kinds of different interesting ways, right? So me, right, knowing me and knowing my world, right, I just observe. I don't need to tell people. I don't need to take up space. I don't need to, pontificate or teach people or, I don't need to waste any of my energy because I know who I am and I know what my beliefs are, right? And so I'm going to walk from that. And I'm going to walk from more of an empowering space and more of a loving space, even if other people don't choose to do the same thing with me. I don't have to, go with the crowd. I can be authentic and be myself, right? So tomorrow we're going to talk about definitely take care of you. Tomorrow we're going to talk about defense mechanisms. and how they influence. So defense mechanisms are so funny because they are just, even though the conscious mind is very much the security guard, defense mechanisms are like, they are that like trigger switch, right? They are like ready to go, to defend these core beliefs, right? So we form beliefs, then we get these repetitive beliefs that become core beliefs, right? And then we defend these core beliefs with our ego. So now we start getting into kind of the ego and how the ego jumps in there to protect us from vulnerability. Excuse me. So yeah, so it will be fun. Again, if you miss any of my talks live, they are pre-recorded already on, not pre-recorded, they're recorded live, and then they are saved on the YouTube. And then also to YouTube, I don't think like IG and LinkedIn and all those, I don't think they save the recordings, but we have them in both my community as well as YT. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for attending. I'm going to run along because I have a patient, but thank you so much for coming, and enjoy. And I hope that you learned something today that you can take with you. All right.